When I was a kid, my family lived in this old house on the edge of a small town in Oregon. We moved there when I was about 7, and it was the kind of place where the air always smelled like pine. And the nights were so quiet, you could hear your own heartbeat. My mum had inherited the house from her uncle, who'd lived there alone for decades before he passed. It wasn't anything fancy, just a weathered 2-story with creaky floors and a big sprawling backyard that backed right up to the forest. The moment I saw it, though, I fell in love with one thing: the treehouse. It wasn't some rickety pile of boards slapped together by an amateur. This thing was a masterpiece, built high up in a massive oak tree at the far end of the yard. It had a peaked roof, real shingles, and a rope ladder that swayed in the breeze. There was even a little porch out front, barely big enough for a kid to sit on, but it made the whole thing feel like a secret hideaway. My great-uncle must have put some serious time into it, though I never found out why. He didn't have kids of his own. My older sister Ellie, who was 10 at the time, thought it was cool for about a week before she decided she was too mature for it. That left the treehouse all to me. I spent every spare minute up there. It was my fortress, my pirate ship, my spaceship, whatever I needed it to be. My parents didn't mind. They were just happy I wasn't glued to a screen like most kids my age. The backyard was big enough that they could see me from the kitchen window, but the treehouse itself was tucked into the shadows of the oak's branches, so I had this perfect bubble of privacy. I'd haul up comic books, snacks, a flashlight, everything a 7-year-old could want. For a while, it was paradise. Things started getting weird the summer I turned 8. It was one of those sticky hot Julys where the days stretch on forever, and I'd been spending even more time in the treehouse to escape the heat. One afternoon, I climbed up and found something odd. A little carved wooden bird sitting on the bed floor. It was rough, like someone had whittled it with a pocket knife, but the details, the beak, the feathers, were so precise it almost looked alive. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe Ellie had left it there to mess with me, or my dad had dropped it off as a surprise. I kept it, figuring it was mine now. A few days later, there was another one. This time, it was a squirrel, posed like it was mid-leap. Then a fox, then a deer. They kept showing up, one every couple of days, always in the same spot near the back wall of the treehouse. I started a little collection, lining them up on the windowsill. I asked my parents about it, but they just shrugged and said maybe a neighbor kid was sneaking around. Ellie swore she had nothing to do with it, and I believed her. She wasn't the crafty type. Besides, we didn't have any neighbors close enough to wander over unnoticed. The nearest house was half a mile down the road. I didn't mind the gifts at first. It felt like a game, like I had a secret friend out there somewhere. I'd even started leaving notes back, little scraps of paper with thanks and "Or who are you?" scrawled in crayon. I never got a reply, but the carvings kept coming. Then they started getting stranger. One was a rabbit with no eyes, just smooth hollows where they should have been. Another was a bear, but its head was twisted backward. I didn't show those ones to my parents. Something about them made my stomach knot up, and I didn't want to admit I was scared. One night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too hot, and I was restless, so I decided to sneak out to the treehouse with my flashlight. My parents were already in bed, and Ellie was probably texting her friends, so no one noticed me slip out the back door. The air was cooler outside, and the forest was alive with crickets and rustling leaves. I climbed the rope ladder, settled onto my pile of blankets, and started flipping through a comic. That's when I heard it. A low whistle, sharp and clear, coming from the woods. I froze. It wasn't a bird. It was too deliberate, too human. I clicked off my flashlight and peeked out the window. The backyard was dark, just shadows and the faint outline of the house against the sky. The whistle came again, closer this time. My heart started pounding, but I told myself it was nothing, maybe a hiker or some animal I didn't recognize. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy steps crunching through the underbrush, heading straight for the treehouse. I ducked down, clutching my flashlight like it was a weapon. The steps stopped right below me, and I heard the rope ladder creak as someone grabbed it. My mind raced. Should I yell? Run! Before I could decide, a head poked through the trapdoor. It was too dark to see a face, just a silhouette against the night sky. A raspy voice said, "You like my presents?" I screamed. I don't even remember what I said, just that it was loud enough to wake the whole house. The figure jerked back, and I heard a thud as they hit the ground. Lights flicked on inside, and my dad came barreling out the back door with a baseball bat, shouting my name. By the time he got to the treehouse, whoever it was had vanished into the woods. My mum called the police, and they searched the property, but all they found were a few broken branches and some scuffed dirt near the oak. I told them everything, the carvings, the notes, the voice. They took the little wooden figures as evidence, but they didn't have much to go on. No fingerprints, no tracks leading anywhere. My parents wouldn't let me near the treehouse after that. They even talked about tearing it down, but they never did. It's still there last I checked. We moved away a couple of years later when my dad got a new job, and I was glad to leave that place behind. I'm older now, living on my own, but that night still sticks with me. I've tried to make sense of it. Who was out there watching me, leaving those carvings? Was it some lonely drifter living in the woods? Or just a creep who'd figured out a kid was an easy target? My mum thinks it was my great-uncle's ghost, playing some twisted game from beyond the grave. I don't buy that, but I can't explain it either. All I know is I haven't climbed a tree since.